Hey, I'm going to be talking about some common jazz scales today that you can use in your improvisations and your solos. A lot of it's based off of major and minor scales. If you already know your major scales and your minor scales, this will just be like, oh, just clicks. If you don't know that well yet, I encourage you to study your traditional major scales and your natural minor scales. Let's begin. The first scale to talk about, and I'm going to be working in the key of C, just because it's easier to look at with all the white keys and it just makes a bit more sense, especially when we start talking about accidentals. The first scale to talk about, to show you, is just the major scale. Again, it's all the white keys on the piano. It's a pretty easy scale to play. You can even play it with one finger and not make any mistakes. This scale is really useful to use on several types, but there's one specific chord progression in particular called the 2 minor 7, 5 7 to 1 major 7, and it sounds like this. There's the 2 minor 7, 5 7, and the 1 major 7, or 1 major 6. Same thing. And the cool thing is that this C major scale works. Threw in a note in there, and I'll get to that note in a second. I want to show you why it works. When we have a 2 minor 7 in the key of C, 1 is C. That means 2 is D. So from D, we can play D to D, D scale, but we're in the key of C. This is called D Dorian. We're borrowing all the notes from C, but we're starting on D. And that's why the C major scale works. And then when we get to the 5 7, which is a G7, the reason why we can play all white keys is, again, because this is also what we call a mode. We're taking the C scale, but we're starting on a note other than C, and we're starting on a diatonic note. Diatonic means within the scale, within the key. So we're starting on G, or the 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And if we build a 7th chord with all diatonic notes of the C scale with no sharps, no flats, everything's white keys, then we get this G7. And now, as a piano player, I'm not going to be playing everything in root position because it's too much jumping around. So I just move things and stretch, and it's just something for piano players to worry about. Maybe I'll make a video about that later. So G7 again. All the C notes work. And then we get to 1 major 7, of course, all the C major notes work. Now, I want to play something for you. I've said that the 2 minor 7, the 5 7, and the 1 major 7 all have one scale in common. That's true. But notice if I play that one scale, C to C, for each chord, one of them is going to fit perfectly. But there are going to be some ones that don't sound quite right. Why don't you listen? The first two, it doesn't work so well. The reason is because I'm focusing on the notes of the C major scale when I have a D minor 7 in the left hand. The chord's a 2 minor 7, a D minor 7. That means I should really be playing and focusing on notes of the D minor 7 chord at the time. All these notes I just played sound great because I'm just copying what my left hand is playing. We don't want to do arpeggios, which is basically taking a chord but breaking it up and playing each note by itself, moving up and down. That's an arpeggio. It's a great way to solo, but there are lots of notes that we can use and borrow from, which are called passing tones. So these are called chord tones because they build this D minor 7. And the same thing for a G7. Those are all chord tones that I'm playing that for a G7, and for a C major 7, or for a C6. The notes in between, though, however, these passing tones are notes that you typically don't want to hang on to too much. And there are some that work better than others. And it depends on the tonality. If I'm major, I'm going to be playing around a lot with specific notes. I'm trying to point them out to you, but basically the two extra notes, the two passing tones that really work well in most situations in major are 2 and 6. I'll play 2 and 6 in D minor 7 for you to hear. And we have the 6. Not so well. It's because it's a minor. But moving down to that 5 sounds good. And I'm using numbers because it's a little bit easier. If I think numbers, if I'm on a D minor 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a B. But for the minor, it doesn't really work. 2 and 4 work the best for a minor 7. And the B doesn't really work because the B is a half step to that flat 7. It works. You can make it work, but you have to use some good guide tone lines to help make that work. For the G7, the 6 in this case works, and so does the 2 or the 9. But the 4. You have that half step, that buzz, and it doesn't sound so great. Then we have a C major 7. And the F, the 4 in this one, doesn't work so well. You can use it though. I'm going to show you ways that you can use those rubbing sounds to make a cool line. If you use it in a way to not focus on it, but to go over it, or use it as kind of a bridge into the next chord, then it works, then it sounds good. And that's what a passing tone should be. Passing tones aren't notes you're going to want to hang on into your solo. So, it can work, but again, you really want to feature the notes that if you don't have a left hand, if you're just an instrumentalist, if you're playing a trumpet, trombone, sax, whatever, or vibes or guitar, and solo, you can't really play every, well, I guess guitar you can, and vibes you could. But if you're an instrumentalist, you want to be able to give the listener a foundation, a basis of where your chords are. So if you're in a D minor 7 and you're soloing by yourself, those chord tones as the main foundation to outline everything. And it's amazing. If you can hear the chords moving, then you're doing the right thing and you're nailing those notes. The next thing I want to talk about, another good scale to know, what would this be? If you're working in a 12-bar blues, there's 2 different kinds of scales that you can use. And we've talked about this before. If you're in jazz band class, that is. But I've covered this before, and it's a minor blues scale. And there's this one I call the altered major pentatonic. Before I get to those, I want to talk about the minor blues. The minor blues is actually coming from the natural minor. Where we get our natural minors from is we're actually borrowing notes from a major scale. Just like we did for the D minor 7 and the G7. The minor's the same way, except of starting on 2 or 5, we're actually going to go up to 6. Check it out. It's a minor scale, and it's a natural minor scale because it's naturally borrowed from a major scale, or it's a relative minor scale. Sometimes people describe it as such. So for these minor scales, I'm going to be back to C. So my minor scale is going to be 6. So 6, 7, there's 1. So 6, 7, 1, la-ti-do. So there's my natural minor scale. So when I'm doing a blues, it's borrowed from 2 different scales. We get a natural minor, which works if I want to do that. Check it out. But you probably noticed by now, it doesn't sound exactly bluesy or jazzy, and there's a couple of things or reasons why. I'm going to remove some of the notes. So instead of doing, I'm actually going to take out 2, play the flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, and what this becomes is, it's called the pentatonic scale because it's only 5 notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Compared to a C major scale that has 7 notes, or 8 if you count the octave at the top. If this scale is weird to you or doesn't make sense, just try it. If you're a piano player, or even if you're not actually, this is a great thing to do, is you just play on the black keys. You want to start with your first group of 3 and the lowest one, the leftmost one, G flat or F sharp. You can just play from there and go up 5. That's a major pentatonic scale because it sounds pretty happy, right? If we start on the 6th, then we get it sounds more jazzy, I guess, or bluesy. So I'm going to bring that back down to C. And it plays some 3 and 7 in the left hand to give you some foundation of what it should sound like. Let's see. It sounds kind of jazzy, almost, really close. And here's why. We need to have one more tone in this. It's the flat 5 for the minor blues scale. And you notice when I start using that note, then it's going to sound more jazzy, I guess you could say. So you can hear how it has that pull, and I'm also doing some things like a pull, it's like a grace note, or doing it down, makes it sound more bluesy. So in a minor, you can actually play that in a major blues too, that would work. But for a minor blues specifically, or like a minor 7, you could also use that. Back to my major, I could use that D major scale, or I could use that. So now I'm going to show you the other one, and I was using notes from that other scale. The other scale that I was using just now is one I called the altered major pentatonic. I know it's a really long name, but basically this scale is a major pentatonic scale with an octave on top, C, D, E, G, A. And the things to make it sound bluesy or jazzy is I add a flat 3, then a natural 3, a 5 and a flat 6 to a natural 6, and then the octave at the top. It already sounds lighter than the minor blues. I'm going to play 12 bars in the blues with the altered major pentatonic first, then the minor blues, then back to the altered major. And I want you to listen and try to figure out if you can hear the different notes and how it changes the feel of the solo. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cheated. Now minor. Major. So hopefully from that little bit of listening there, you kind of could hear that one sounded a bit more harsh, and it's that minor blues. Because that flat 5, it really makes that sound soulful and bluesy, which is great. But if you want something a little bit more lighter, I really suggest that altered major pentatonic. Boy, it's really hard for me to say that. Try saying that 10 times fast. But it's a really nice scale. And now I'm going to go back to what I first talked about, that 2 minor 7, 5 7 to 1 major 7. With that, I want to show you how I can use the C major that one scale over the 3 chords. I'm going to alternate. I'm going to do 2 5 1 1. Then with the C major scale, or with the modes and things I was talking about before. Then after that, I'm going to play the altered major pentatonic scale, and I'm going to let you listen to that. And it's going to sound a little bit different, maybe not so great on some of the chords, but the extra notes, that flat 3 and the flat 6, are going to add some harmony or harmonic variety to the solo. Check it out. So first is just the modes, the D Dorian and the G Mixolydian. So you can hear how it has a different sound. Again, the best thing that you could do in a solo, my personal advice, is to mix it up. Play a line going up one scale, come down a different scale, throw in notes when you want to. The best thing to do of all is just to experiment and get really comfortable with all the 3 different scales that I talked about today. That major scale, the natural minor scale, which became the minor blues, and then the altered major pentatonic scale. For me, those are the biggest 3 that I use when I solo and when I'm listening to jazz. Those are the notes that I really pick out a lot. Of course, it's not the exclusive 3 best only scales you'll ever want to use, but they're 3 scales to start on that I think would help improve anyone's soloing. So, hope you learned something from this. Thanks for watching. Bye.